It awakes every morning, not unlike a fat, overweight giant coming out of an alcohol-induced coma. A thin ground fog dusts the earth, top lit by underpowered halogen street lamps, every third one lit, creating spooky spotlights of shifting shapes and shadows. Nothing seems to move at all. And then, through the changing light, as black gets its first tinge of blue, the sickly halogens go off. The village twitches then, the overweight giants, comatose neurons sparking to life. Ghostly shapes emerge from the giant's paws, and they shuffle with sleepy, sullen gaits to my little watering hole, Brazos Taverna it is called. Thank you, Tina. Sandwiched between Alfonso's photo shop and Oscar's laundry. The 5:30 a.m. patrons rarely make conversation, and eavesdropper would hear incoherent murmurs as I lay out a row of glasses filled with coconut fenny. Fenny, where would Goa be without it? Where would I be without it? They come in every day, the toddy tappers, in their threadbare coats, with their cocks and balls and scrawny butts, all sacked up in brightly printed lungis, their skinny thighs shivering against the feel of the cold sickle blade. They knock back two each, and then they go climb their trees. The ubiquitous Cocos nucifera, with its rustling palm fronds, supplying 40 million coconuts per year all over Goa, one per family per day. They are all Hindus. They are my brothers. Every morning I wonder which of them might never come back. 40 feet above the ground is no place to have a bad day at the office.
That was great. So let's just start off very easy and simple. Obviously, everyone loves the title of the book. Tell us a little bit about how that happened.
So back in the early days when Homie and I were batting ideas back and forth for what eventually became Finding Fanny, the idea of the story was almost entirely his. And he mentioned one thing. He mentioned Goa is just full of villages where pointless conversations just proliferate. And that was one phrase that just stuck with me right throughout. And I think it kind of conveys the mood of the entire book. It kind of hangs like a cloud over the entire book, right through every twist and turn and every nuance, every word uttered by these nut job characters. And that's it. It was just the most apt title I could think of. I could not think of anything else. And thanks for that, Holmes.
Homie, grab the mic. Just tell me about between the two of you. Obviously, this novel is set in Goa. It really brings Goa to life. It's beautiful to read, and it was beautiful to watch. How did Goa become the setting?
Hello. Hello. Okay, I might as well just, sorry, I have to digress.
Hello, check.
Check. Oh, so I'm going to just digress. I sent the book to Nasir about a month ago, and he started reading it. He sent me a message saying, I haven't had so much fun reading a book for I don't know how many years, and why the fuck didn't you make this into the film? I have no answer. Question was?
Goa. Why Goa?
There's a red light on your mic.
Yeah.
Put it on.
Okay. Well, why Goa? Because I don't know. I was sitting in Goa when I wrote the story, and I found the people in Goa extremely interesting. It was about pointless conversation. Everyone I met would really discuss how hot it was when you were sweating. They would say how humid it is when it's raining, how full they were after they eaten. And I said, fuck, sorry. I said, wow, this is incredible how just everyone just keeps talking about the most obvious things. And the story was always set in my head about a postman finding a letter that he had written, and the irony of that never got posted. So it was always there. I tried to actually, in between, make it into a Hindi film and try to set it up north, but somehow the way we had written it and the way we had collaborated writing it, everything got lost when I translated it. So just stuck to my guns and we put it in Goa.
So Nasir obviously was a dream casting. Tell me what made you think of him? How did you approach him? How did that come to be?
Well, as my friend Sami was just telling us, since I made Being Cyrus, I've always had a vision in my head of anchoring Nasir and just plummeting him into the sea and letting him drown. That was my first visual of this movie. But no, Nasir, I mean, was the obvious choice. And I remember I narrated this to Nasir a long time ago. And he couldn't do it at that time for various reasons. And I decided if I can't get him, I'm not going to make the movie. So I didn't make the movie, and I ended up making another film in between, which Nasir loves. And and then when I got back to it, he was the obvious choice. Yeah.
Kirsty, let's go back to the book really quickly before we jump into anything else. Was the book a chance to almost write what you didn't like about the movie? Was there anything that you...
My God, controversial questions. No, the book is exactly the way I imagined this story to unfold. It was just a different way of telling it, that's all. He imagined it differently from a cinematic point of view, and I just felt that whatever worked for cinema, there could be so much more done in a book form. So that was it. There was no other motive behind it. It was just my retelling of that same story that we had collaborated on. That's it.
So of course, the big difference in the book and the film is your character. And
Don't spoil it.
I'm not going to. But I'm curious to know what you think, Nasir. You've read the book, you've been in the film, of course. What do you think? How did you actually approach this character? What do you love about him? What do you hate about him? And how difficult was he to play?
Yeah, I will, to answer that, I'd just like to read a little passage that Kirsty has quoted from Oscar Wilde before the book begins. I'm sick to death of cleverness. Everybody is clever nowadays. You can't go anywhere without meeting clever people. The thing has become an absolute public nuisance. I wish to goodness we had a few fools left. Yeah, I empathize completely with this statement. But, it's apart from the compliments I received for my performance, I also got some brickbats. Foremost among them was one person who told me that I played him like a retard. I think a guy who walks into a funeral and mistakes a young girl who he knew 40 years ago to be the same person he was in love with cannot be anything but a retard, you know. So I just loved the complete innocence stroke foolishness of this character. I empathize with it a great deal. I often felt very foolish when I was a child. It has sort of stayed with me.
So when I read the book, I sort of had this feeling like the film was almost a love story, whereas the book felt more like a coming-of-age story. It's almost like Ferdy sort of came into himself and became more of a hero in one version as opposed to the other. So I'm just curious as to how did you see him? What decision did you make when you decided to change the ending, homie? Did you decide other endings? Did you explore other ways of actually going with it without actually revealing anything?
No, I didn't change the ending. He changed the ending. It was originally written with my ending, and I must admit that I way prefer Kirsty's ending. And since I'm admitting things here, I might as well admit that the book is far superior to the film. But no, so the ending was a surprise for me when I read the book as well. Because how we worked was, I started writing the screenplay. I told him the story that I wanted to make into the film. I started writing the screenplay, and I would ask Kirsty to write it in a very novelistic way, because I think Kirsty writes brilliantly. And the imagery that his words evoke really helps a filmmaker when you're trying to, I mean, I can't exactly show the coconut pickers with their balls and scrawny asses sticking out and with glorious sensors. But the point is that I really felt that what he would write would inspire me in different ways to how I would finally construct the scene. So he kept writing these massive pages and pages for each scene. And then I just pick and dissect and take stuff and put it into the screenplay. So finally, by the end of it, once we had the screenplay ready, he had a huge manuscript ready, and he said, hey man, do you mind if I publish this as a book? So I said, sure, but let the film release first, and then you can make it into a book. That's why we flipped the whole thing around, and that's how it came about.
But you guys have collaborated before as well on Being Cyrus. So clearly you're, aside from being very young, dynamic, Parsis, good-looking Parsis.
Well, for Parsis, we are very young. For Parsis, we are definitely young.
The Parsi bit's right, at least. Tell me, what is it about the two of you that works as a dynamic, as collaborators creatively?
I think for me, I love, like I said, his style of writing. It helps me create different things. And also, I find his humor just fantastic. It's completely irreverent. It's very sort of self-deprecative, and I love that kind of humor. And yeah, I think that's how it works. And also, we don't do the same thing when we work collaborating together. You know, he'll write the dialogues, I'll construct the scene, then I'll read the way he's written certain passages which I can't possibly put into a film. I mean, I can't show what's in a person's head, which Kersi can elaborate on. As if you've read the book, you'll realize he really can. And it sort of just clicks when it all comes together. It clicks, at least for us. I don't know about the public, but it clicks for us.
Kersi, say something nice about Homie.
Yeah, really, man. I mean, I made the book better than the movie.
So the reason I'm sitting here is because of Homie. Being Cyrus was a short story which I had written for Gentleman magazine, and they rejected it unequivocally for bad language. And it just languished on my computer for like 2 years, and then Homie always had to bug up his ass about making a movie back then. And I said, hey, I've got a short story, you want to read it? And he read it, and I have to say this man's got cojones, a complete newcomer in this industry. He just went ahead, got the finest talent on board to make Being Cyrus. And then one thing led to another, so that's it. I'm actually here because of him.
Wonderful. Great. Twinkle, I want to come to you next. Do you want to maybe start off by doing a little bit of a reading?
First, I'd like to say that I got this copy. I didn't open it. I got it. I bought it because Kersi was too cheap to actually send me a copy. And when I got it and I read it, I messaged him. I said, this is terrible. It's terrible that after reading this, I want to rip the first 8 chapters of my next book and throw it in the bin. And he said, oh, yeah, wow, yeah. So I said, I just finished reading To Kill a Mockingbird, and I didn't feel like that. And, you know, your book is so amazing. I felt like that. He's like, what would you expect from a book in the 40s, Civil War? So civil rights. So he accepted my compliments with an absolute lack of humility. And, I actually thought this was his 9th book, but Homie told me that this is his first.
9th book?
I thought, because, you know, I thought maybe you're used to people saying, oh, wow, you write so well, you write so well. So having said that, the other thing is it's a wonderful, wonderful book. He's truly gifted. Please go and get your own copy, because clearly he's not going to hand out any. Also, you'd have to scrounge around a bit, because Kersi claims that Crosswords hides his books behind old Reader's Digest. And nowhere near...
In the children's coloring section.
Yes. And nowhere near the best-selling Chetan Bhagat's. But Kersi, I don't know if you really want to be stuck hip to hip or bum cheek to hip with Chetan, but that's really up to you. So on that note, let me read from Book 3, Chapter 16, Rosie. She watches his sweaty, receding back. Pins run up her legs and pass buttons to needles who run down. She finally takes a deep breath, purely an involuntary need to get oxygen to the brain. The air feels hot, and her lungs feel like they are doused in paraffin. Vision swimming and jaws clamped tight, she places her hands on her knees and jerks herself upright, throwing one arm out against the stolid banyan for support. Her blanket falls off her shoulders and pools at her feet. She sees nature, ogling her stark, naked body. The trees, the clouds, the wheeling birds, the unseen insects in the grass, everything pinching its lips in disapproval. Humiliation is the true death. Life flashes before your eyes until there is no life left, and at the end of it, you're still alive, burning in shame's acid juices. Her mind roams the past looking for comfort. All that comes is a patchwork of hazy events, places, and people, and not one of them offers her a landing spot or a little hole she can snuggle into and forget the present. And worst of all, the single event in her life that she had sat upon, smothered all these years, as effectively as she might smother a squirming mouse under her enormous bottom, the death of Gabriel Albert Fernandez, her son. It rises. A mother's defense mechanism tricking memory cells into blurring the ghastly picture of that final dreadful moment, taming memory's wild dog tendencies to bite and claw at her dreams all these years. It crumbles. The images rush back, etched out and clearer than they have ever been, of her getting there first, kneeling next to his body, rigid and ridiculous in that 800-rupee wedding suit, and peering into his mouth and seeing that little replica of himself that he had drunkenly tried to eat and which ate him instead, and reaching in and pulling it out, but it's too late. The gates have been shut forever.
Wonderful. So, people say that funny books can't be literary, and you're a very funny writer yourself, Twinkle. So tell me, when you were reading this book, what were you thinking as you were reading it? What sort of book did it feel like for you?
Kersh's book is practical. There are lots of fish in the sea, and so whoever gets stuck with your rod, one is as good as another.
Did you guys know what the ending of this book was when you started? The ending of the story. Did you know right in the beginning what was going to happen?
The movie?
The movie, the book, either. The ending of the story, did you know what was going to happen?
Yeah, absolutely. Yeah. I mean, I think we had the ending. I had the whole story in 10 pages. Sorry. I had the whole story in 10 pages, and I was very clear that I wanted it to be as sad and but funny in a very sad way. And the whole thing was not about what the ending was. It was about the journey, as in the way we wrote it, and how all the character graphs and what they learn along the way. And sorry, I'm just going to the film again, but I just thought it was just amazing, that last scene when we shot with Naseer. And for an actor to be able to do that, knowing how absurd the situation is, after he's accosted the daughter, thinking it's his beloved, who's not aged obviously, she's been embalmed for about 40 years. And then to see, I mean, if you just see that shot of Naseer, and just see that shot, and it could be a tragedy you're watching. It was just so convincing and so brilliant. So, but yeah, the ending was always there.
Naseer, do you want to maybe read for us a little bit?
Conversation, right? Once you get past the scatology, which is pretty frequent, I'm sure you're going to enjoy it greatly. So I'll read you a bit about Ferdy, naturally. But before that, there's a little passage which I find absolutely beautiful, which I'd like to read before I read Ferdy finding the letter. And I have it. No. Yeah, got it. Minutes pass. Oh, wait a minute. Correct. Minutes pass, he does not know how many. The wall clock is deep in the penumbra of the bed lamp glow, each tick more a tut-tut of disapproval. The second hand stuck in place, tripping over itself for eternity until the battery juices out. He turns through the window, which is just enough to let little air in. The colors of the night are coming. The velvety outside the window through which the comforting light of a new day gives Ferdinand the courage. Oh, you've already read this.
Please, you
Okay. No, I'll read the Ferdy piece because here we are. When he lights the wick, the flame flickers hungrily, sending out longer fingers of light into the gloom of his room, reaching out even beyond the halo of the Holy Family. You're supposed to light it in church in the presence of the Son of God, but this is an emergency. And the heir to the kingdom is right there anyway on his bedside table, 33 years younger, still a babe in his mother's arms, but carrying that benevolence in his innocent blue eyes. He does the recce, makes sure the pillow is in the exact center of the bed, makes sure the plastic water jar has the handle turned at precisely the right angle. Sounds like Parsi to me. And the glass of water is by his bed on the floor. All is right with the world, he tells himself with a twinge of apprehension. The flame licks the air like a dog's tongue, hungrily feeding off the oils in the wax, shooting up tall and straight into the shadows that hang like a rain cloud over the bed. He can see the basin, the kitchenette, the door of the bathroom, the dining table and chairs. He can even make out the other body parts arranged neatly on the table surface, clustered around their own kind, segregated from the others. His eyes move counterclockwise groggily, sweeping past his front door, noting that it is triple locked, and moves onto the bookshelf next to it. All of a sudden, his attention snaps back to the right. Dread monkeys up his spine like a coconut picker shinning up a palm tree. Something long and white is coming in from under the triple-locked front door. Ferdy hears short, slithery sounds as it appears larger and larger. Then, with one final shh, it glides all the way in and stops. Even as his heart does handsprings, he realizes it is only an envelope. But at this hour, he chews his lower lip. His eyelids feel heavy and his spine yearns for the embrace of the mattress, but now fear has pressed the pause button on his stupor. His brain goes through the usual computations of whether or not this can be life-threatening, as it does with all events in his life. But even at his paranoid worst, he cannot see anything sinister about an envelope. But at this hour, emboldened by the candle flame, he staggers a zigzag path to the front door, fumbles with the tumblers and yanks it open. He pulls his head out into the black night of Pokulim. Nothing moves. Some streetlights burn with feeble glows, others stutter, crickets confer busily, rodents squeak and cower as a hunter owl shrieks out a warning. But there is nothing out there that could have pushed that envelope under the door. Except for the sound. He pulls his head back in, shuts the door and waits. He counts to 10, eyes gleaming with excitement, swaying under the unsteady effect of the restill, then pulls the door open and thrusts his head out again. He squints, cranes his neck, not quite willing to actually step out into the black night. He almost nods off in that position, leaning like a drunk against the door frame. He retracts his head like a startled tortoise, slamming the door shut and triple locking it. He quickly snatches up the envelope from the floor and scurries over to the bed into the safety corona of the holy light. For the next 10 whole minutes, serenity seems to settle over the village. The soft sounds of families tucking themselves into bed, of lights being switched off with muffled clicks, of restful sighs and duvets being pulled up and heads sinking into pillows, of murmured conversations as bodies snuggle up against each other. And then it comes. The wail that slices through the air in all directions like a cluster bomb explosion. This, people will reflect much later, is the record breaker. It raises the bar for all time on human expression of grief and distress. They just lie pinned in their beds, stunned. The wail goes on and on. It arcs through the Pokulim sky, going in and out through open windows or any crack in the masonry that it can find, chilling bloods and firing imaginations. Joao's wife Jacinta huddles closer to him, her face white as a sheet, and wonders aloud, "Eh, Saiva, how long is his breath?" The arc of sound seems to hit a peak of sorts and then begins to subside. The villagers wait, light-headed from holding their breath. Down, down the sound goes, and then, as if affecting a bumpy landing, breaks up into a series of coughs and gurgles. Then there is a long silence. "He stopped," whispers Jacinta. Joao, who knows better, buries himself under his duvet a little more and ticks off the seconds. "Joao," she hisses, "maybe he died."
That was fantastic. Thank you. Can you just tell us a little bit about how hard it was to write that? I mean, we know that there's a story, and we know what the story is right in the beginning, but the writing process. Tell us a little bit about the process of actually writing this book.
So anyone who attends the first novel, this is for all of you out here, you will find that your initial effort is going to be something akin to verbal vomit.
And my problem is the opposite now, because I'm so used to finishing in 800 words without wasting a single word. All the descriptions that Kersi, flourishes on, I can't seem to do that. So I have to finish, and then I'll keep adding. Okay, the sunset was turning, from a bruised purple to a mango yellow, whatever he does. But so for me, it's actually it's pretty much the opposite. I'm used to writing very succinctly. And, yeah.
So,
Take a few tips from you.
So Kersi, what is next? What's the book that's going to happen next, or what's the film that's going to happen next, or what's the collaboration that's going to happen? That's definitely a pointless conversation. Anyway, I'm going to cut it short because we're out of time. Can we have one last reading maybe before we put an end to
The
this?
consensus is it should end with you, Naseer. But whatever.
I found the last bit extremely moving, and I would like to read that. I asked Kersi if I should, and he said, I don't know because you're giving it away. But the fact is, it's not a murder mystery. I don't think we'll be giving anything away. But it's really, I was very, very moved by this bit. Rosie took care of everything. I tell them, made sure everyone came for the funeral. I think she went around to every house and yanked them out. She looks a bit hollow these days, like that enormous volume of flesh is slowly evaporating inside her. Her skin is flopping around the empty space. She cried the most. Her eyes were hot springs that continually gushed, her mouth forming a miserable little O. And when she looked up to the heavens, as though checking out Ferdy's next stop, she looked like a fat seal about to twirl a ball on her nose. Savio and Angie, they are still around, still fucking. Rosie doesn't know or doesn't care. Someday they'll marry, have kids, grow old, die. No big deal. I'm thinking of inventing a cocktail, I tell them, and naming it after Ferdy, calling it Ferdinand's Fling. Kind of sounds like Singapore sling, no? It's not going to be anything classy, just some coconut feni with 7-Up and mint and lemongrass and lime. Keep it simple yet strong, a bit like Ferdy was in his last days. In the middle of all the nudes, Tracy says, there was one portrait of a man, a thin, long face. That one, it fetched the most. Really? I say, giving them a hint. Story's over, you can now fuck off, pardon the French. Go back to your guest house, hotel, wherever. She says, critics say it was the most expressive, intense portrait seen this entire century or the last. No two views were ever the same. Some saw the most elegate despair, bleakness. Others saw madness. Some likened it to a war victim photo, a man who had watched his entire family massacred. Others said it was a mass murderer looking slyly repentant. It fetched 468,000 pounds, she says. The fat nudes, they were the sideshow, said some critics, as if he was saving up his mojo for this masterpiece, she says. Rumor has it he did a whole series of them, maybe 5 or 6, but no one knows where they are. If they are found, they will be priceless. After he dies, even more. The man in the portrait, she says, looks like that man up there. She points to my wall. Looks like that painting. They leave. I clean up. Who would have thought, I muse, Ferdy and his daft love story. New leathery skin and fresh mojo notwithstanding, still Ferdinand. Invisible in a crowd of one. Insignificant as an appendix. Useless as a wet dick. Boring as a nun's dream. Irony, I tell myself, I will probably never sell that painting. But I may sell the others if I can get them back. I gave 2 to Angie, 1 to Rosie. The 2 Angie has, one of them is of a man shuffling down a road, bent over with defeat, yet going on. The other, a thin, tall man staring into the coffin of an enormous lady. They give me goose flesh every time I look at them. The look and expression on that man's face. Experts will join the dots, say it's the same guy, the one that went for how much? Alive, worth 468,000 pounds. Dead, 3 times that. Bloody hell. I should have such choices for everything in my life. Rosie has made hers into a shrine. Candles and incense and fresh flowers every day. The most expensive shrine in the world. Not from the candle giving it that old gritty feel over the years. Of an old man. Of an old man singing in a choir. His face etched with lines of devotion and bliss. Staring up into some golden halo, light into the high recesses of the church. All I told Don Pedro was, no nudes, so he gave me the others. I can easily wait for the fucker to die if I'm greedy. He won't last long in retirement. Guys like him, they're like great whales, great whites. Need to keep moving, otherwise they die. Water stops moving past their gills, they die. But waiting might be a folly now. I must try and get the other paintings back somehow before the girl, what's her name? Tracy, before she goes back and shows her art teachers the photo. The photo of the portrait on the wall. Before the collectors and gallery owners and art thieves from all over the world descend upon my little village, sniffing around houses, pulling stuff off walls, tearing down shrines. Thank you.
So, if anyone has a question, just raise your hand and we'll try and get you a mic. Yes? Yeah, right there.
Hello.
Please go ahead.
My question to writer is, normally it is observed and noticed that when writer doesn't write for the film, he is not considered to be a writer. What you have to say?
Sir, could you please repeat the question?
If a writer doesn't write for a movie, so he is not being considered as a good writer. And what is the difference between writer, those who write for the films, or
Kirsty, why don't you...
Well, a writer is a writer actually. Whatever he writes, he could be writing travel articles, he could be writing opinion pieces, he could be writing a novel, he could be writing a screenplay, he could be writing poetry. I think a writer is just a writer. It's just a different genre that he or she experiments with, and that is what separates them. Sometimes the lines are blurred. Prose writers write poetry, screenplay, travel articles. I don't write poetry, but I do the others. So I think anyone who says that is talking through his hat.
and what about the young generation? It is going away from the. What is the reason?
I think there's more money in film, sir. There's a lot more money in film, so a lot of people are going towards film. Nobody has the time to read books anymore. So perhaps prose writing is on a decline because of that. And I think it's the lure of money which is making young kids go for movie writing these days, and that establishes them as writers as well. You know, so it's a choice that they make.
Do you blame internet also? People get
I
information.
think maybe we should have questions from some other guests as well. Does anyone else have any questions?
Movies have been adapted from books, and you have written Mrs. Funnybones, which is a story of a life of a daily life of a woman. Would you like your book to be adapted in a film someday?
I think it would be a sort of tragic comedy. My mother-in-law will commit suicide because I've depicted her as this, sort of crazy old bat. So yeah, I don't think they'll ever make a movie of that.
Twinkle, I have a question for you. You said you're not romantic, you're practical. How is Akshay? Is he a die-hard romantic, or is he as practical as you are?
I don't know who Akshay is. Thanks.
Yeah, let's stick with the conversation at hand. Any other questions?
Yes, Twinkle, the question is for you. When we talk about the village of pointless conversations, so in Bollywood, do you think many relationships, come to a pointless end, and which is why we are seeing so many breakups in 2016?
No.
What is your take on this?
I'll ask Naseer to answer that.
Yeah, the answer is no. Next question.
Yes, please, Mahesh, go ahead. Yeah.
This is going to be a difficult one.
Not at all, just bring it back to sanity, I guess, or insanity. Homie Gersan, you both know South American magical realism. Were you both influenced by this?
I don't.
You don't? Well, homie does.
Never read Marquez in my life.
Yep. I'm just saying, was there an influence within the writing and the conception? I know even in the film there wasn't.
I think as much as Casey denies it, he's extremely influenced by it because of what all I have told him about Marquez, since he can't read Marquez.
There's another quick one actually for the publishers. Just listening to Naseer read like this, don't you think there's an opportunity to put out a red book by, something like this?
An audio book, Kartika?
An audio
Maybe you
book.
can answer that.
Sure, I charge a lot of money for that.
Any other questions?
Hello. Yeah, Mr. Kersey, my compliments to you for bringing out the Goan culture and its authenticity. I just want you to share, I want you to share with us that how is it that you are so diligently conversant with the Goan culture? Like, you use the, the nuances like Saiba and stuff like that.
I'm
He
going to
does drugs regularly.
Oh, sorry, you're still waiting for my answer? No, I actually have spent some time in Goa like everyone else, and if you just listen to any auntie or uncle speak over there, and you can just assimilate their voice into your speech, and literally that's it. And if you just pick up a book on Mario Miranda cartoons, you will know everything you need to know about Goa. You get the toddy tappers, you get the taverna thing, you'll get somebody called Petrocius Pimenta di Bartoloso, whatever, you know. So it's just pick up a book on Mario Miranda, and that'll be enough for you to fake a novel on Goa. That's what I did.
I feel like I should cut it now before anyone says anything else.
I'm just seeing the headline tomorrow.
Hi, Kesh. It'll be on Twitter before that. Go
Hi,
ahead. Maybe
Brinda.
we'll take a
We
last.
didn't call you here to ask questions, just to drink.
When I was attempting to write a script once, I remember I had this conversation with you because you had written several scripts by then. And I asked, because I was...
Are you on drugs?
Do you want a serious question or not? So I remember I asked, you know, when I was doing the script, I was going for script writing classes and I was reading books and I was trying to figure out the process. And you told me that, so I asked you what was your process, and you said that you didn't want to know, you didn't want anyone to tell you, you didn't want to read about it, but you just wanted to figure it out as you went along. So my question still remains. That was several years ago. I think it was at Blue Frog or something. My question remains, which is that, yeah, you probably didn't remember, that after several scripts and now a novel, is in middle and ending in mind before you actually start writing it, or is it something that just gets revealed in the process?
Okay, so first of all, several scripts. I've just written 2 actually. I'm still writing my third one.
Several?
Yeah, sure, that's more than 1. I still don't know how to write a screenplay. My sensibility is purely prose, and I make screenplays fat and turgid things which give directors pounding headaches when they go through them. So I still don't know jack about writing screenplays. I'm still learning. Hopefully I'll get it right one day. But don't go to school. Just figure it out on your own. Honestly, it's just easy. It's just telling a story. And instead of going into the atmospherics of the surroundings, just focus on trying to make your story clever through dialogue. That's it. Was that your question, or am I just...
No, it wasn't, but that's okay. No problem.
People are shaking their heads saying, no, that wasn't the question. I don't have a process now, Brindy. I don't have a process. I just start and see how it goes.
Okay, we'll do maybe one last question, if there is one. No? Okay. So I think we can say thank you to all of our panelists. Thank you very much, everyone, for being here. Thank you to the audience.
Thank you, Tina. Thank you, Naseer, for coming and making...